Hey you guys, it's me Crystal, and I'm having severe lighting issues right now, and so hopefully everything is okay, but there's kind of a bright light in my face, so it's kind of bothering me. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about writing today and do an update about what's going on with my books and self-publishing. And so last week I posted a blog post on my blog about it, and I'll link it below in case you want to read it, but it's kind of long, so I'll summarize it here. And basically, long story short, in a nutshell, I decided not to self-publish anymore because it has been incredibly stressful for me. I don't enjoy being in control of everything and being responsible for everything. And I'm also not very good at it either, which is just adding to the stress. And what I mean when I say I'm not very good at it, it's like you have what I call a basic level marketing, which is cover categories and keywords. And for some reason or another, I wrote vampire books for a decade almost exclusively, except for one book, and that book was very clearly a paranormal book. It was a ghost book, essentially. And so I always kind of assumed my books would be in the horror section, and I never worried about what genre my books are in. It was never anything that ever crossed my mind until I stopped writing about vampires, and ever since I've just kind of been in this no man's land of, do I call my books paranormal, and where are paranormal books in the bookstore? Are they in the fantasy section, or are they in the horror section? Do I write some kind of horror subgenre? Am I in dark fantasy? I have no idea. And that's a problem if you're trying to self-publish books, if you don't know very basic things like what kind of categories and keywords to put with your books. And also, if you're like me and you don't really have the right covers on your books in the first place. And while I think all my covers are beautiful, they're not right for the stories that they're covering. They're not right for the stories that are in the books, and they're not right for whatever genre my books are in. And I take 100% responsibility for everything, but basically what happened is that the people I worked with, my cover designer, certain promotion companies I work with, the company I work with to on the NetGalley listings that I have for a few of my books, and my cover designer that I use for all of my books, they thought I wrote paranormal romance, and I don't write romance. While I take full blame for everything, because of course I was the sole decision maker and everything ultimately boils down to me and everything is my fault, I never at any point told anyone I worked with that I wrote romance. They assumed because they worked with so many people who write romance, and instead of correcting them, I mistakenly thought that it would be obvious from the blurbs that the book wasn't romancy. And I didn't even realize my covers looked romancy until a friend told me about 3 books in. And so I made sure with my 4th book that we were on the same page about what genre my book was in. Even then, I don't think I had the genre right, but whatever, at least we were on the same page. And as somebody who judges covers pretty hard, I should expect people to do the same with my books, and if the cover looks romancy, even if the blurb doesn't mention it, you would still go into the book expecting there to be some kind of strong romantic element in the book. But regardless, that's not the only decision I decided to make. I also decided to unpublish all of my books, and it was basically for a similar reason, in that being an indie author was kind of a burden. I don't think self-publishing is something no one should do. I think it's just something that when people are talking about the pros and cons of self-publishing, I just kind of wish more people talked about that you really need to take your personality into account, and how much stress you can handle. And do you actually really want to be in control of everything? Do you want that responsibility of everything being up to you? And I just don't think enough people talk about that, because it's like, when I first looked into self-publishing, it seemed like something that I could handle and that's something I would enjoy, but the reality of it has been something that I can handle and something that I absolutely do not enjoy and don't want to do. And so one of the reasons I unpublish all of my books is because I like to say, the first rule of philosophy is to know yourself, and I know myself pretty well, and I know if I leave my books up, I will be wanting to help them be seen, and at a bare minimum, in addition to changing categories and keywords into something that's, you know, more fitting for the stories that I write, I also have to recover everything, and that would cost no less than $1,000. And I do not want to spend $1,000 recovering all of my books, because I know that if I leave my books published, that I will be tempted to add to the pile of published books later. And because like, if everything's taken down, then if I for some reason decide to self-publish again in the future, I'll really have to think about it. I'll have to consider if I want to republish any of my books, and if I want to pay for new covers for any of the books that I want to republish. And that will kind of force me into that introspection that I'll need to have to talk me out of doing this again, in case I forget how I completely fell apart and how incredibly stressful it was and how much I hated it. Because, you know, when we recover from like burnout or whatever, and I've been extremely burned out for a while, when we recover from burnout, a lot of times we feel so much better, and then things in the past kind of lose their charge, and we forget that we didn't enjoy something. And so I just want to remember, unpublishing all of my books will be a very quick reminder that this was something that I did not enjoy and that I don't want to do, just in case. Okay. So that's the main reason why I wanted to take my books down, is because it was just like this burden. So deciding not to self-publish anymore, it took like several pounds of stress off of me, and unpublishing my books took several more pounds of stress off of me. Like, I decided to stop self-publishing like in December, but I wanted to live with it for a little while before like I told everyone. And that was kind of like the final bit of weight off my shoulders. Once I wrote that blog post and I actually let it publish, it was just like it's like I've been in like this dark, cramped hole, and now all of a sudden I'm like out of it and I'm not stuck anymore and I can move around. There's like sunlight on my face and it feels so weird, but like in a good way, and I just feel so much better. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, is so I can go back and look at it. And it's like, you remember when you unpublished everything and you said you didn't want to self-publish anymore and you felt so free? Like, I want to remember that, you know, because anyway. But I also kind of made a decision on like an individual basis for every single book. And also, like, for the record, I don't hate any of my books. I don't think they're trash. It's nothing like that. So, but my first book, No, It's With Wicked, that I published in May 2017, I feel like it's a fun book. I feel like it's a good, solid book, but it's kind of like basic paranormal. There's nothing special about it. If I had a whole bunch of books like it, you know, I don't think it would be different, because I was really stressed out, but at least everything would be on the same page. That book is what I call a home-based book. It's what I needed to write so that I would, because I tried to write YA books for a while and it just made me miserable, and so I needed a book that wasn't YA that I could use to like compare it to the YA books I had written, to see the differences in like how I felt and things of that nature. And so I needed to write that book as kind of like a palate cleanser for my brain or whatever, get back to home base, recalibrate the creative system or whatever. Because, and I bring that up because I'm okay with this book not being published. Like, it doesn't like make me sad to shelve it. It's something that I really like, but I really like a lot of my books, and some of my books are bad, so. So my second book, Winter Siren, that I published in November 2017, I absolutely love this book. It's one of my favorite things I've ever written in the world. I have no issues with it. I want it to be published, but I'm not going to leave it published by itself. And I definitely wasn't going to leave it up as is, because, like I said, I have category issues, I have cover issues. I want people to read this book, and I feel like if I had like some help, then maybe this book could actually, people could actually read the book. It is the book that sold the best out of all my books. I really love this book, and I have no problems with it. It's just, I don't, like I said, I don't want to keep self-publishing, so I can't really keep anything up. If I can find some kind of home for this book, I will absolutely try to find a home for it, because, like I said, it's one of my favorite things in the entire world. But self-publishing is just not right for me, so moving on. In April 2018, I published Whisper, and Whisper was when I finally realized that all of my covers were not right, but at that point, I was like, that's okay, I'll try to fix it going forward. And then going forward, I'm like, I at least made sure me and my cover designer were on the same page. Whisper is a difficult book, and that's because when I wrote it, I was very, very burnt out. And I don't think the book would have turned out differently if I wasn't burnt out. I just think that if I wasn't on this kind of strict publishing schedule, I was trying to get 6 books out in 3 years. I got 5 out. Whatever. But I don't think I would have written the book probably ever, or at least not at that point. And there are some things in this book that are absolutely so good and make me feel really good about myself. And there are things in this book that I'm like, I can't tell if this is bad or not. And I keep going back and forth between like wanting to do some rewriting, but none of the rewriting that I would do would have any effect on the overall plot or really change the story in any way. They're just like little minor things. And so then I kind of feel like, then why am I doing that? I probably messed it up somewhere on a foundational level, or I'm just overreacting and I can't like see things clearly. And because it's bothering me, I just don't want to look at it right now, and I just rather shelve it and like move on and like try to learn from it, and don't write when I'm like under extreme stress or something ever again. So that way I won't have this, did I mess the story up or not? You know, like I don't know. It's just, I feel like it could be better. So, yeah. And so then my 4th book that I put out October 2018, I was still recovering from being burnt out when I wrote it, but when I wrote it, I felt like everything was fine. But basically, this was House of Falling Embers. It's a Hansel and Gretel retelling, and my original vision for this story, it was a little bit darker, but I couldn't figure out how to make that version of the story work. And normally, if I wasn't like on some kind of crazy self-imposed deadline, I would have just set the story aside and wait for my subconscious to fix it or whatever. But because I was kind of like, well, what can I do with it right now? And it changed some things. It changed the tone, it changed the pacing, it changed quite a few things. And while I love what I did, I kind of hate what I did at the same time, because it was about a year later, where I think it was because I was reading this Nutcracker retelling, and it had nothing to do with my book, but there was something about that book that opened this little door in my brain, and I was like, oh my gosh, I see how I could have made my original vision for that story work. And I was completely distraught. And I don't know, writers, we can be crazy sometimes. And I immediately wanted to pull the book and like unpublish it and like rewrite it. And I don't know, I was just fighting with myself, and so I decided to just write like a different version of that same story, but you know, in the vein of what I originally wanted to do. But then I was like, then I'll have basically 2 versions of the same story out there, and I didn't want that either. And so I just kind of felt kind of despondent over losing this idea that I just loved so much, and I'm like, I just wrecked everything. And I also don't think the cover for this book is right, but like I said, at least me and my cover designer were on the same page with this book. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like, at least if I unpublish it and it's completely pulled down, then I can figure out if I really want to try to write that version of the story, and then I don't have to worry about there being this other version out there that's published that's basically the same story. So now I feel like I have the freedom to do that if I want, or I can just learn from it and move on, which is what I'm more likely to do. But at least now I feel like I have the option and the freedom, and I feel like I can do whatever I want, which is great. And then the last book I published was the poetry book Garden of Ravens in August 2019. And the only reason why I published the poetry book was because I didn't want a year to go by with me not publishing anything. And also, when I first decided to self-publish, that was the project I wanted to do. I wanted to do like a poetry book, something that was going to be low stress, like just to try it out to see if self-publishing was something that I would enjoy, if it was something that I could handle. And I should have listened to my original, gut on this and done that. And that way, with that project, I would have seen this is absolutely not something I want to do, and I could have saved myself a lot of stress and a lot of money and a lot of time. And maybe I wouldn't have wrecked some stories, or maybe I didn't wreck anything. It doesn't matter. I really can't see anything clearly right now. Again, I had cover issues. Like, the cover for that book is absolutely stunning, but it doesn't fit. It's absolutely not what I wanted. My cover designer was trying to talk me into something more basic and more like other poetry books out there, but I don't write the kind of poetry that's like popular right now, and it's like, it doesn't need to look like those books because it's not like those books. And I'm like, if you're going to go against the grain, like I said in my blog post, then you need to go all the way against the grain. You can't go halfway because you just create a mess. And at least if I had the kind of cover that I wanted, then people would know when they saw it that it's not a regular kind of poetry book. There's just I just made a lot of mistakes. Every time I look at that cover, I just like relive all of that second guessing all over again. And I'm like, I am paying for the cover. I should have, exactly what I want. And I know what kind of content is in there. And so it's like, I should have just stuck with it and said, nope, I don't care. I absolutely want to go with this kind of cover. And I know she was trying to be helpful, but so I wanted to talk about it because I don't regret self-publishing for the most part. I feel like it's something I needed to do because I learned a lot about myself. I learned what kind of marketing weaknesses I have. I learned, what I can handle. I learned a lot about things. I learned, the value of a publisher also, and just how much work it is to get a book together. And I also, had some issues with my writing that I needed to fix, because like when I was like querying and stuff before, I was so focused on like what would get me, what can I do to get an agent's attention? What can I do to get requests? I needed to not focus on that anymore, so I could focus on, my writing, and I could like strengthen my writing, and I could focus on finding the kind of stories that give me life and make me happy and make all of this hard work worth it. And I needed that, I needed to step away from that so I could see things clearly. So it's worth it from like that standpoint. And I don't really know, and I said in my blog post, I don't really know what I'm going to do going forward. I'm going to finish something at some point after a break, and it might only take a week or two. It might take, 6 months. But I just want to give myself that time to like recover, so when I finish something, I will analyze things and see. I just want to make sure that I am in a good headspace, and that whether or not I write or not is not dependent on whether or not I think I can get published, if that makes sense. I want to be able to write because I want to write and not write just because I mean, I do, like, I feel like I said this in my blog post, but I'm like, I feel like a storyteller without an audience is a very sad thing. So I want people to read my books, and I want them to enjoy it, and I want to share stories or whatever with the world. But I just want to make sure that I can keep writing, you know, in the midst of, like, getting rejections and stuff, because I don't know if any of my books will ever get picked up, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find a home for Winter Siren, and I don't, you know, I just don't know. And so I just want to make sure that I'm okay if that doesn't happen, because if I'm not writing, I just feel like there's just this imbalance, and there's just this unhappiness that I have. But right now, the thought of writing books that no one is ever going to read just makes me really, really sad. So I'm taking a little bit of like a break to, like, work on some other things and get some movies watched that I want to watch, whatever, get some reading done. Work on some OCD issues, fun stuff like that. It won't take more than a few weeks, and then I can try writing again and see if I can handle it. I don't know. I really, really, really want to write. Anyway, I just wanted to, like, do an update because I feel a lot better just, like, getting everything out and talking about everything, because I feel like we need that. We need this, like, catharsis. We need to reach out to people. We need support. We just need to at least be honest with ourselves. And yeah, and I feel not completely hopeless, which is much better than I felt a couple weeks ago, which was completely hopeless. So I just feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel or something. So anyway, so that's all for this video, and I'll see you guys in another video. And of course, I don't know when that's going to be. In my last video, I mentioned how things with my writing are weird. This is what I was talking about. You know, the not self-publishing anymore, the taking all of my books down, you know, the not really knowing what I'm going to do with any new books I write in the future. But I don't have to worry about any of that right now. You know, I just want to enjoy each day and move forward and get a little happier every day. So anyway, I will see you guys in my next video, and feel free, you know, to click a bell if you want to know when that video is going up. And yeah, if you want to share any experience you have, feel free to share. And yeah, I will see you guys next time, and bye.